Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to have you here. We're going to give everyone just a minute or two to join. So get situated. You're here for developing a performance mindset with the Valor performance team. We're really excited to have everyone here today. We've got Tim and Inga from Valor, and Tiki from HubSpot, and Pete, who's co-moderating with me from Atrium. Really excited. So we'll just give everyone another minute or two to join. As an attendee, we've disabled the chat, but the Q&A is on. So if you want to chat with our speakers or Pete or I as moderators, feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A panel. You can comment and upvote on others too, which is an awesome feature. All right, we'll go ahead and start our conversation. We've got a lot of content to get through today. So welcome to this Modern Sales Pros hosted event, Developing a Performance Mindset, sponsored by Valor. We're really excited for today's conversation. As I mentioned, Modern Sales Pros is hosting today's event, and MSP is a community of more than 20,000 sales management, operations, and enablement professionals. My job as one of the community facilitators is to help our members answer the revenue-related questions they would otherwise struggle to solve. We do this via a robust online forum, amazing virtual events like this one, and hopefully, again, one day in-person events. If you are not a member of the community and you're a sales leader, don't worry, because you applied for this, you'll be in the community soon, or registered for this now. You'll be in the community soon. With that, we have a really exciting event coming up, the Modern Sales Pros team. 3 times a year, we host a virtual revenue excellence summit, and our next upcoming one is in October. It's focused on all things annual planning. And yesterday, we just dropped our keynote speaker. It's Michelle Bazana, who is a co-author of Cracking the Sales Management Code, one of the most widely referenced sales enablement and management books. So highly recommend registering for that event. I just dropped it in the chat. I think Pete's excited for her to speak too.
I am. That's like my favorite. That's like one of my favorite sales management books. It's like the sales nerd Bible. It's amazing.
Love that. Love that. Yeah. Awesome. So moving on, like I mentioned today, our sponsor is Valor. I want to pass it off to Tim Mann to say a little bit about Valor.
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. Super excited to be here. So Valor is a one-on-one digital leadership and performance mindset coaching platform, all rooted in performance psychology. So the actual science of performance excellence. Because it's a multidisciplinary approach, our coaches are PhDs, advanced degrees in performance psychology. They're Olympians like Inga, who you'll meet here momentarily, elite military leaders, all of these elite performers that have experience working in many different arenas, specifically within revenue teams. They know how to take all of that experience from across all those different disciplines and apply those performance principles to help people be in the right mindset at the right time consistently. And when you think about, a sales team, what could be more important? So we put a coach in everyone's corner, and through our platform, help scale it across organizations.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. And with that, we're excited to introduce you to our speakers today. First up, we have Inga.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Inga Stesilonite. I'm an Olympian. I threw javelin, and I also was always interested in double career. So I went to Beijing Olympics on my unpaid vacation from my full-time job as a business analyst for a medical company. So I love joining those two fields. Yes, two fields. Transferring performance mindset from day one to my business analyst day job. Also very interested in technology. I worked together with MIT as a coach and a lecturer. I also had my own program, MIT Sports Entrepreneurship Bootcamp. So really love those fields of performance, business, and technology. I'm super interested in breaking limits while working with the professionals from the most demanding jobs and Olympians. Thank you so much for having me, and I cannot wait to have this discussion.
Thanks, Inga. You went first, but I feel like that's the best introduction. Tim, Tiki, I hope you can match that. Tiki?
Yeah, I was just going to say, how could you make me go right after Inga? So, no, it's nice to meet everyone. So my name is Pratik Biswal. I go by Tiki. I am currently a sales manager on the mid-market team at HubSpot. I've been at HubSpot for about 9 years now. So I think I was around employee 400 something. We're at 5,000 now. So amazing to see the growth and scale. I've been lucky as a leader to get to work in a lot of different segments at HubSpot. So our agency partner team, our small business team, our mid-market team. Another kind of cool thing that I've gotten to do through HubSpot is actually get linked up with Valor. So I'm a 2-year customer of the Valor program. I work closely with a performance mindset coach to help elevate my game. And then I also am a tennis player and coached a couple of Division III tennis teams. So it's really cool to see the intersection between athletics and mindset and the coaching that we do there. So very excited to be on this panel today.
Did you overlap with Mark Roberge when he was there, or at all?
I did. Yep. Yeah. So he was our VP for about the last year and a half there when I started in 2013.
Yeah, he's a frequent MSP speaker. He always brings down the house. That's that's awesome.
Yep. Yes, he did. He spoke at Revenue Excellence Summit, but the last, I think, October edition, really good speech.
Those rad.
And then we've got Tim.
So Inga, I don't know if you know this, but I was actually at the Beijing Olympics as well, drinking beer in the stand, watching people like you. I was there.
Same.
I would love to meet you there.
Yeah, I think we missed each other on the field. So I am the head of sales and marketing here at Valor Performance. So bit of an unconventional background to sales. I started my career in the Marine Corps for 4.5 years, moved on to nonprofit work, working inside Rikers Island, New York City jail, helping people plan for their release. And then went from that type of work into Silicon Valley startup world, very different world, coming from the worlds that I was coming from. But I've worked now at companies from seed stage all the way to Series B in roles from SDR all the way to my current role now. So for me, it's always been about building upon those experiences. So from being a runner to being in the Marine Corps to being in nonprofit work to now being in sales, how do I bring all of that to the work I do every day?
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. We're really excited for this conversation. As you can see, our lineup is out of this world. And then Pete.
Yeah, last but not least, so my name is Pete Kazanji. I'm one of the founders of Modern Sales Pros. I also am the founder of Atrium. We make data-driven sales management software that helps managers like SDR, AE, and CSAM managers use data to improve team performance. In terms of kind of like my background, this is my second venture-backed startup. My previous one, TalentBin, was a recruiting software company that was bought by Monster Worldwide in 2014. And that was kind of like, I also, Tim, not dissimilar to you, kind of have a little bit of a unconventional background, kind of how I came to sales. My background's actually in product management and product marketing. And when I started TalentBin, I was kind of like a business generalist founder who very quickly had to be like, okay, cool, someone's got to sell this. That's you, Pete, get to work. So I was our first seller, sales manager, sales leader. And then ended up writing a book on startup sales called Founding Sales after we were acquired by Monster. And then in terms of like coaching and kind of like athletic background, was a competitive baseball player and a competitive ski racer growing up. Not anymore. my Olympic event is email now. But I'm really excited. Like I'm a big fan of coaching and kind of instrumentation and performance, like data-driven coaching and also the kind of the psychology of coaching and performance as related to sales, because it's so intrinsic. And so I'm super pumped to facilitate this conversation with this team here. So I think, Hannah, we have some housekeeping, then we'll get into the conversation. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. So
All right.
attendees, please use the Q&A panel today. We've disabled chat, but that's just because you can comment and upvote on other attendees' questions or comments in the Q&A panel. So please use that. And as always, this will be recorded. If you weren't able to attend live, hello from the future. And let us know how you liked it. All right, our agenda for today. Pete, want to take us away?
Yeah, I'm super pumped. So we're going to go through a couple questions here and then do a couple prompts that we kind of planned ahead of time. A lot of good things that the team has to share here. Specifically, we're going to talk about where we can learn from professional athletes about winning, why performance mindset is so important for winning teams, and then what does it take to develop that mindset. So first and foremost, let's go ahead and get into the first topic here. So, what can we learn from professional athletes about winning? And, Tim, given the fact that you have a whole squad of former professional athletes who at Valor kind of providing this coaching and facilitating that, why don't we start with you on what can be learned?
Yeah, it may sound funny to say, but I think one of the biggest lessons for me has always been that losing is part of the process, right? And you have to get good at losing. And it took me a while to get there for that, right? It is also a question of like how you define losing, right? But I would take it back to, I ran fairly competitively for a number of years, and I used to beat myself up after every run. If I didn't run better, if I didn't run, like it's got to be better. I got to go. It's got to keep going. And I'd have a bad run, and I'd be like, oh, forget it. Like I'm not a good runner. What am I doing? Like it's just easy to take the hits and take them personal. So then, as I came into a sales career, I've won the 7-figure deals, but I've also lost them, and had that happen. And it's easy to kind of get stuck in this rut once you start losing and not keep sight of the big picture and what you're trying to work towards. Right? I don't know what the stats are in baseball, but I've seen stats of like how many times they strike out, how many times do they actually hit the ball compared to how many times they don't. But they're keeping the big picture in mind. And that's, to me, it's such a great carryover to the sales world.
Yeah, totally. I mean, if you're batting 250 or batting 300 in baseball, you're like kicking ass, which means that you're not getting a hit 70% of the time. It's kind of like sales. Tiki, I know that, you've been a sales manager for quite some time now. How do you think about this?
Yeah, I would actually echo a lot of what Tim said. I think that learning from your losses is just as important as learning from your wins. Something that I do with my reps a lot, like we'll actually do a closed loss analysis, and that's way more valuable than sitting around talking about like why we won a deal. And so for me, it's like, it's not really a loss if you learn something from it. Paraphrasing Jay-Z, right? And so for me, I think that's also, this idea of like, you don't get to the top of your sport without losing, right? Like I think about, we'll go recent, Daniil Medvedev just beat Novak Djokovic in an impossible victory, right? At the US Open. And he's lost to him 5 times before, and he's never beaten him in a 5-set match. And you can see how he tweaked his game to get the win this time. And I think that's perfectly applicable to business as well.
Yeah. I was literally talking with one of my reps about this yesterday. we went and had beers, and we're talking about how important kind of good close loss reasons and good close loss notes are. But like so often it can kind of be like a shameful thing, like, oh, I lost this deal, I want to hide it. And so the way that we approach that at Atrium is like, not only do we have good crisp close loss reasons that are validation rule enforced, but we also have like a template associated with the close loss notes, right? So it's templated out, like, you know, what was the thing that was the blocker? What would you have done differently? How do you want to approach it different? And what we, not only do the reps do that themselves, but actually broadcast via email when they lost it, broadcast via email to the sales team and also via Slack. And the reason why we do that is just to like assist, like just normalize it. Like, yeah, you know what? Like if you have a 30% win rate in sales, you're like kicking ass, right? Which again means 70% loss rate, right? And so so like you have to normalize that losing is okay, and then we're going to get them next time, right? We'll get them on the come up. I guess just like Medvedev there, right? Inga, when you think about this, what would you have to add to this?
I love this question, and it comes up almost always when I work with clients, and it came quite often when I was competing too, and even now in my career. And the question what I pose usually, what is your meaning of success? What is that meaning of winning for you in general? Is it closing the biggest sales deal ever and have this legacy for yourself? Or is it could be defined as how does this career grow me as a character or as a person? And then against these definitions, we can always have meaning, define what this particular result at the time means and how we can extract the learning points from that result. Was it the winning? What was the strongest parts and what were conditions so allowed me to get there? And if it's losing, okay, in these conditions with this kind of approach and attitude, this is the result. And we move on with more data, with more understanding what it takes to have this intentional, repeatable success for ourselves, which goes in hand of that answer, what we answered, why we're here.
Yeah,
Totally.
Oh, go ahead, Han.
I was just going to say, Inga, something else you mentioned in like the prep session was that when you have specific time to train, it's limited time to make the most out of it. How do you think that applies to business and sales?
Sure.
The more we climb into the professionalism, not the hard work, but the quality work becomes super important, because we all becoming more limited with resources of time and energy. So being super precise at knowing what is the most meaningful, and for us to focus on that, what is the meaningful and most controllable from us, and can derive the most benefit at that moment, it becomes this reflection and redirection of focus to capture it.
Yeah. What like as the only Olympian amongst us, what would you say from your Olympic, from your javelin experience has been the biggest crossover to your professional career?
Yeah, especially with understanding what winning is, understanding the process of growth and getting to those different levels of what we are reaching. For 2 years straight, my results did not grow as a javelin thrower because I completely changed coaches. I completely changed the training system and technique, and my body just wasn't absorbing all those new learnings fast. And I was thinking, maybe that's it. That's what kind of athlete I am. That's all, my plateau. My peak performance with this consistent results, because it's stats. Like, you cannot argue with data.
Right.
But deep inside me, I knew I can do more. And this bigger goal and this understanding of yourself allowing you not to quit too soon, and kind of being okay with time, giving yourself time to learn and to grow and to keep moving forward. So this definitely what learning of my understanding how I learn and how much time it takes and what are the best conditions for me to learn is the most important for me to transferring my knowledge or my advancements in different careers.
Yeah. So don't give up. Don't give up on a performance plateau, right? Don't throw in the towel. Let's talk about performance mindsets and how the concept of a performance mindset is really impacts winning teams. I know Tiki, you obviously have been thinking about this for a couple of years now, as you've been working specifically with performance mindset coaching or coach. Like how has that impacted your team?
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of my favorite questions because I think when I started working with my Valor coach, I was doing relatively well. I was hitting President's Club. I was a top performer, and my coach was like, we're going to sit here, we're going to work together. What would success look like? If we can help move you 5%, 10%. And I said, well, I'm already kind of hitting the goals that I need to. And he said to me, like, if you can't envision what success looks like, how will you know when you've achieved it? And it was just like, mic drop, done. I was like, all right, my mind's been blown. So I think really where he was going with that was like, define what success looks like, and then don't have it be this big abstract goal. You have to break it down into small milestones that you can hit, and equally importantly, celebrate as you hit. And those should ideally turn into behavioral changes. So I think a team without a performance mindset can kind of be a rudderless ship until they've defined what success looks like and what the plan is to actually get there.
Yeah. One of my favorite business books, I don't think it really counts as a business book, but it's The Score Takes Care of Itself by Bill Walsh. It's absolutely fantastic because it's exactly what you're talking about. Like you can't impact like as a single player, especially like on a football team, like you cannot individually like make your team win, but you can kick ass on your job every play and do those behaviors excellently, and then the score will take care of itself. But like if you're thinking about like the big monolithic goal, it's like, oh, I'm little me, how can I ever get there to a $2 million quota or $1 million quota or whatever? But if you just break it down, it's like way more achievable. Inga, when you think about like, I mean, you obviously work with a ton of teams. How has kind of performance mindset changes been helpful with the folks that you work with?
Yes, and maybe I'm gonna share my own personal story when I encountered my problems with with performance mindset. And it happened in my first European Championship. Before European Championship, I was a killer. Like I was limitless, I was fearless, I was winning constantly. I had this confidence. I knew exactly what I'm doing on the field, and none of the competitors really were discouraging me. However, when I finally qualified for European Championships and arrived to train in that stadium before competition, I got out of the car and suddenly I could not breathe. Suddenly I started turning many different colors, yellow, blue, green. My heart dropped completely. And my coach freaked out too, because he never ever seen me in this kind of state, but he understood that I had a panic attack.
Oh man.
So he packed me back into the car and we drove to the hotel and we did warm-ups there to preparation for competition. And while I'm doing this preparation next to the hotel, I'm thinking, how the hell I'm gonna be performing if I cannot even enter the stadium?
Right.
And this is where I understood what I need to really check in with myself, how to manage my mental and my emotional state with more discipline. Because until then, I thought, I got this. I know exactly what I'm doing. But this different level, it's kind of scared me at the levels what I did not expect. So because I was with this goal, I need to find the ways how to calm myself. I started looking at anything around me what gave me calmness. And I realized when I look up at the sky, it kind of relaxes me. And then later on from science, I also find out what it gives the body understanding of relaxation. So I thought, oh, at least maybe by looking in the sky, whenever I feel this overwhelming feeling, I can enter the stadium. So it's a good start for me. But I thought maybe I can use this as a superpower and maybe even perform better. So anytime during competition, when I felt super nervous, I would look up in the sky and think, sky belongs to me, none of their competitors, and only for my javelin. And if I will want it, it's only when they will be able to throw. So kind of having this super mind concepts for myself to being able to bring myself back into what I can perform and to be and the result was I not only was able to be in the stadium to throw, but I also did the junior Lithuanian record and became finalist in the championship. So that was a real first hint what not only body but also mind and emotions needs to be trained and prepared.
Yep. Yeah.
One thing you said.
Go ahead, Hannah.
I was just going to say, one thing Inga said in the prep session that I really loved was that performance is the complete freedom of letting you perform, which I feel like she just highlighted really well there.
Yeah, I think pre-call preparation for sales managers and sellers is kind of related to that. I really love what you talked about it, like just jumping into it or like jumping into the stadium is kind of can be like a jolt versus like preparing at the hotel. Similarly, in the 15 minutes before a call, if you do your good preparation, if you know who the personas are, if you know where you are in the deal, if you know like what your exit intention is from the call, all of those, so that you can set an intention around that. And now you've got it all in front of you. Well, there's no reason to be nervous, right? Like I got this, I already just did, I just visualized how the call was going to go down. Now it's going to happen that way, right? Tim, when you think about a performance mindset, how does it impact winning teams in your experience?
Yeah, one thing that we're hearing a lot of right now is, just how competitive the market is, how things are constantly changing, how teams are just kind of trudging through, trying to find ways to connect and engage and continue to get better if they're selling in a new way, whatever that is. And there's so many tools out there that there's often, it can feel like an arms race for more tools to drive productivity, drive pipeline on your team. And the tools are 100% important. You got to have the tools to drive efficiency, to drive that productivity. But it's a person behind the tools, right? Just like Inga said, like she could have been the best thrower out there that day. But if she didn't have it together, she didn't have her performance mindset in place. It doesn't matter how strong she is, how many championships she's won before. She's not going to get it done. And it's the same in sales, right? You could have, won President's Club the one quarter, but then maybe some things are going on in your life. Maybe you lost a couple deals, take a hit to your confidence. What does that do? So for what I hear and what I see with Valor clients, it's a lot of like, we need the how. We need people to be able to show up consistently, take all the data from all the tools that we're having, and put a coach in their corner to really develop that mindset so that they can show up consistently.
Yeah, and that's so like, I feel that that's the sort of thing that like happened organically previously. A lot of organizations have moved to a remote environment. And like being a seller, when you, it's like being like slumping like a batter, right? You can have those moments. You're like, did I forget how to sell? What the hell is going on here right now? And if you're sitting there with like, 15 other people in a bullpen, well, like someone next to you just took lumps, and then on the other side, someone just won a deal. So you're like, okay, cool. Like bad things happen to other people, and then also like I'm better than that person, so I can win deals too. When you're like completely remote, it's tough, right? You're just kind of like, and so, yeah, I can only imagine how much more important it is to make that explicit, whether it's through coaching or kind of like, management coaching or what have you, such that you don't have people who are kind of like, oh.
Yeah. Well, and the other side to that too, Pete, you heard Tiki kind of mention he was already kind of at the top of his game.
Yeah.
The flip side to it is, if you're at the top of the game, you hit President's Club the 1 year and you're at the top, there's a lot of pressure to continue
right
in it, right? And as a manager, as your team, if you're losing, there's pressure, and if you're winning, there's pressure, right? So regardless, there is that pressure to perform. So how do you mitigate that risk? How do you make sure you have the tools, you have the technology, you have the team, and you have the mindset?
Tim, one thing I'll add there about that story, right? I used to make President's Club, but I would hit it on New Year's Eve, right? It would be stress until the last minute. So like, think about, thankfully there's a renewed, people are talking about mental health in sales, especially being remote, right? Like working with my Valor coach, I started making President's Club in October, in November. Like that's an increase in my mental health and my stability when I'm not waiting until, I've got champagne and it's New Year's Eve.
I love it. Yeah. And I think, Tiki, I know you're a big tennis player. I think it's been kind of like, can you imagine the coaching conversations that are going on right now with Djokovic, right? It's exactly what Tim was saying. Like, right. Like not only he's amazing, and he had the chance to win the Grand Slam, right? The annual slam, and it slipped through his fingers. And then similarly, like to emphasize what Tim was, I guess the second example of that is like right now you've got Naomi Osaka, who's really like, she's at the top of the game and like, ostensibly killing it, but at the same time has like tons and tons of pressure on it, is not enjoying it, right? Like tennis is not fun for me. It's making me unhappy. And so I think those are the sort of things that we can think about as relates to our teams and our reps to make sure that like they're not in a similar situation. Even those top performers who are kicking ass, they're like, oh man, if I slip a little bit, does that make me a bad person? Am I not me anymore, etc. Hannah, I know that you wanted to. We have our next topic here.
Totally, yeah. So Inga, you're going to kick us off with talking about developing that performance mindset. A couple of things I think you hit on really well in the prep session were your SOS saying, and then can you talk a little bit more about Pete was explaining about measuring yourself next to your competitors and how that makes a difference in a performance mindset?
Absolutely, and especially what you mentioned, Pete, in just now about Naomi Osaka and Simone Biles with the pressures of how they're not enjoying anymore of the performing, even though this is their passion, this is what they love, and it could be very painful. And this is why I love kind of going through this SOS definitions as first standing for having strategy, O for openness, S for support. And these three words kind of going through this mindset of, is this next push of those limits will result in the growth or injury?
Right.
And through this strategy, through this openness, and through the support, you can determine what that next push of our limits and expansion could be consequences of. Is it gonna result in that success, or is it gonna be in a huge setback, that confidence injury, what it will be so much harder to recover? And strategy usually means in really knowing and what kind of skill are you developing at the moment? What are the skills and steps to develop that skill? How you measure it? And then what you mentioned before, when you have this prep sessions before the call, it's also very important part after the call cool down. What you guys also doing during the losses, but also during the successes. And especially for athletes, it's very important in half an hour range after the performance, kind of visualize the perfect performance, what they wish to happen, or even repeat that performance in visualization, because this is what's stored for you as a memory after this event into the long-term memory. So we're trying to keep modeling from every experience and extracting the best, the strongest points for ourselves to keep moving forward, instead of like, oh, I have this, I never perform well when executive is in a room because I had this experience before. And this is how I recorded it. But I say like, oh, the executive gives me a little bit more chills. I need to prepare more, and how I can address it. This is how I would address it. And like, oh, let's try the next time. I will gather a little bit of information and training. And I cannot wait. Give me another opportunity to meet with this executive or another executives for me to try and improve. And this is how different it could be, the experience between one where you are super afraid and avoiding the situation, another one you cannot wait to keep seeing how you growing and performing yourself. So having this also openness about where you are and where you're moving, and redefining yourself. But I am not this person who is afraid or not having a good performance in this situation, but I am this person who is keep improving there. And finally, support, what even Johanna reminded me, it's all about what kind of people we have around us. Because if not my first coach in Lithuania who offered me to be a javelin thrower, I never ever imagined myself to be Olympian. I never even knew what javelin throwing is. But this surrounding yourself around the experts and people who invest in you with love and effort and support to grow each other makes huge difference in our life experience, in our quality of life.
Totally. Tim, you raised your hand and you're up next for talking about developing a performance mindset.
So I accidentally raised my hand. I didn't.
Oh, okay.
That was
he was going like this to Inga.
I don't think I've ever raised my hand in a call before, so that was a first for me. So glad to know it works, but it was by accident. So what does it take to develop a performance mindset? You know, it's not on accident that the company's name is Valor. It really does take courage, right? It takes courage to do the work. It takes courage to take a step back, ask other perspectives, do the work to try to get better. It would be far easier to just say, this is what I am, I'm good, continue to kind of go along, continue to try to hit your number, and not try to improve. And that's where that outside perspective is really essential, right? Because it can be really hard to get outside of yourself, right? You can get so stuck in seeing what you see. So having an outside perspective to kind of show you that big picture sometimes is really crucial. But you, at the end of the day, you gotta have the courage to put in the time and the work and the energy.
Completely. Tiki, do you want to talk a little bit more about the accountability and self-reflection piece?
Yeah, it's no coincidence that all of my answers dovetail off Tim, because I've been working with Valor for so long, right? But I think it's for me personally, like the hardest part of developing that performance mindset was literally looking in the mirror and being like, what could I be doing better? Especially if you are an A player and you're putting up good numbers, like why would you change anything, right? So like that was the first step, is like I started analyzing, like when I have a good month, do I take my foot off the gas? Do I get lazy with prospecting? You know, in turn, is that laziness trickling down to my team, right? You know, and so like I think it's let's take a good hard look in the mirror. Let's understand how we could be better. Let's document what behavioral changes we need to make, and then let's make sure that we're making those changes consistently and not falling back into the old way of doing things. We'll talk a lot more about coaches coming up, but like having a coach is a great way to have someone that can hold you accountable to that. And also, last point here is just like, you often need a reminder about why you're doing what you do. I remember I had a manager who said, "Why do you come to HubSpot every day?" And I said, "To make money." And he's like, "No." He's like, "I appreciate the sales answer, but like, really, why are you here? What does this enable you to do?" So we'll link to it, but I would recommend everyone watch the Simon Sinek TED Talk on finding your why. And the overall theme is that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I would strongly encourage, anytime you're trying to get that accountability piece, that you think about your why.
Completely. I just pasted that in the chat, Tiki. I know we're running low on time, so we're going to spin through this last prompt. Hopefully not too quickly, but Tiki, starting with you again, let's talk a little bit more about the objective and unbiased feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be quick here, right? I think before I had my Valor coach, my accountability partners were my boss and my wife. So one side was like, "Are you doing your chores and are you doing the dishes?" And it was that kind of accountability. And then my boss was like, "You're hitting your numbers, you're good. There's nothing else we need to talk about here." So having a coach that was outside of like my normal bubble was an absolute game changer. He was able to look at things and he could frankly tell me, like, "You were thinking about this from an outside perspective in entirely the wrong way. Here's why I'm observing that." And I'd be like, "Huh." And that's perspective that I never would have gotten without that coach relationship.
Yeah,
completely. Modern Sales Pros hosted like a women mentorship wind down the other night, and that was a really common theme, was that your mentor needs to be an objective, unbiased party, just like a coach. So makes a lot of sense there.
Yeah, and like manager report dynamics like have like weird power relationship stuff to it as well, and all sorts of stuff, versus like someone who's like, we would hope that managers are there to, you know, to coach. And but as you were kind of saying, Tiki, like, "Hey man, you're good, like I'm going to worry about the low performers," right? Or like, you know, "I'm going to press on you really hard because I'm struggling to like make my collective number, you know, I'm the RVP and I've got these 6 sales managers." So like having somebody who's outside of that power dynamic and outside of that kind of like stress value chain, I could totally imagine how, like, you know, enlightening that is, like frees up for like real coaching.
Very liberating, totally. Inga, do you want to talk a little bit more about the strategic feedback piece that coaches provide?
Yes, many times when I tell people what I do, they said like, "So what problems are you solving?" But it's not only about the problems, what we encounter, challenges, but also a lot of work, it becomes about opportunities. But also Tiki mentioned before, like there's a way much bigger opportunities apparently for you, but the coach opened for you. And there's the reason why all these elite athletes have so many coaches and the support systems around them. It's not because they lack of motivation to perform, because it gives huge advantage to find the most strategic feedback fast. Where is that point of improvement that gives you the biggest step forward? So as a coach, when I'm working with client, I'm always looking, where is that point where we, by improving, we're gonna free up a lot of potential in exploring as a personal growth, and also of the possibilities capturing. So I'm still biased because I grew up in this sports bubble where I needed always feedback. And when I went to work for a medical company, I thought I'm going to have the same structure, but I missed so much of people telling me how I'm doing. Like I never knew if I'm on the right track or not. So I always surrounded myself of mentors, of coaches, where I can solve my problems or thoughts or challenges as fast as possible, so I would not dwell and completely get stuck in that situation for a really long time. So I need coaching myself, and I love supporting the high performers by providing this kind of support.
Totally. Tim, last but certainly not least, you talked a lot about self-reflection and self-accountability. Do you want to talk some more about how doing more work doesn't necessarily mean you're being more productive?
Yeah. So what I've always found from coaching, and to give two examples, is that the coach will often see what you don't see. So for me, coaches have pushed me harder than I thought I could push myself. While at the same time, they have held me back to hold the reins on me more so than I ever would. It would happen to me in competitive marathon running. My coach would send me my schedule and I would look at the times. I'd be like, holy shit, like there's no way I'm not going to run that time. But my coach believed that I could run that time.
Yeah, you can.
I kind of took that in. I said, well, if he thinks I can run that time, maybe I can run that time. Like, why not? And then I could. And same thing with my Valor coach now. It's that perspective, kind of like Tiki mentioned, to give you this to challenge you to look at something from a different perspective that maybe you're not seeing. And that will kind of, at the same time, in different scenarios, help you find permission to slow down so you can go faster. And just for myself in my career, I've always defaulted to just do more. I'll wake up earlier, I'll work more hours. And that's needed sometimes, but that's not always the best strategy, and it's not always a strategy for the long term. So again, it goes to getting outside yourself and having that expert and that outside perspective to help you see it.
Yeah, I think you see this a lot with sales, like because sales is such an activity centric thing, and like you can always do more. Up until like there's 40 or 50 hours in the week, and then you can say, oh, okay, like, and there's a certain amount of customer facing time. But we all know like the more customer facing meetings we're having, the better off we're potentially going to be, except for the fact that like you can definitely burn yourself out, right? And so just being mindful of that, and obviously that shows up in athletics all the time around like, you know, pushing yourself so hard that you injure yourself. And you see this with reps a lot. I think, you know, Tiki was talking about this. There's I had a big month or I had a big quarter and I kind of like slack off a little bit. There's also that's kind of like the vanity fallback. But then there's the other one, which is like, I've been grinding so hard that I just get to the point where I'm like exhausted. And you definitely see that with reps if you're not careful, where it's like, oh man, this person's been having like 25 customer facing meetings for like 4 weeks in a row. That's like, whoa. Right? And you got to like intervene there and be like, okay, like let's pump the brakes here. You're going to hurt yourself.
Completely. And I feel like also when you're getting into that rut of just getting stuff done, it's really easy to keep adding stuff to the to-do list and keep the cycle going. As someone who frequently does that. Moving into the live Q&A portion of this, really excited to answer some of these attendee questions. We're going to kick it off with Tim. From an anonymous attendee, you talked about how losing is a part of winning, but how do you bounce back and feel motivated to try again when you have a series of losses or lose a sale that you have been working hard on?
Go to the Beijing Olympics and you drink beer in the stands while they're doing great things.
That sounds super compelling.
No, it's a good question, right? And it's so much easier said than done. You put in so much time, so much energy into these things. A loss is still a loss, and it can hurt, right? So for me, it's always been an ongoing learning process, and something to work on with my coach is to give myself a moment to be like, that sucked, right? Like that wasn't good. Like that did hurt a little bit. But then, like Inga had kind of mentioned, like what is success? Is it just that deal? Is that the only thing that matters, right? Or are you looking at your entire quarter, your entire year? It's not a short-term game. It can feel like it, right? If you're chasing a number every quarter and your team's chasing a number every quarter. But at the end of the day, you're talking about a career. So we've seen it. We talked about using sport analogies. We've all had those bounce backs, right? It's a lot easier to hang up your hat and be like, well, I didn't do well. Maybe it's not for me. But if you continue, like Tiki had mentioned, just continue to learn from the losses, then it's not really a loss. You learn something from it. You're going to take it with you, and it's going to make you stronger in the meantime. But it's a process, and it's an ongoing process. Some days I do it well, and some days I don't do it well. Right? Like it's an ongoing process that you continue to try to learn from.
And also what I wanted to add, in every loss, there's something what we did well. And in every win, there's something what we didn't do well. And what helps, what we do when we go to every competition, when we go for the meeting or sales meeting, or we determine what is a learning experience, what I want to have. It's not only what kind of deal I want to close during this call, and usually it's a process, right? So in every meeting, in every call, we can determine ourselves what kind of learning I want to have, what kind of skill I want to exercise and improve on. And after that, you can evaluate what was good, what I did well during this call, during this interaction, during this performance. Also, what could be improved from what I absorbed, or from the feedback what I received, and what step of action can I take to exercise of training of that thing what needs to be improved. And when we have always break down those results into this system of questions and answers, then it becomes that process what Tim mentioned, where we yes, emotionally invest into this in our goals and results, but also have this step back and have this perspective where we can see evolvement, something but we can control of, because so many sales deals are so out of the control because of it's not fitting, maybe time, maybe budget, maybe some condition
Right.
what's happening was absolutely out of your control, so you
Right.
cannot take on that.
Completely. Thanks for that, Inga. And then we're going to get to one more question before we move into our panelist takeaways. But Tiki, what are some ways to ask for feedback if your work environment doesn't naturally have them?
Yeah, that's a great question. Quick funny story for you. When I was my first year in management, we did like a 360 review where your reps fill out all this information about you as a manager, and you know, things you do well and things you could improve on. And one of them was like, he's just so nice to me. I feel like he's never giving me like anything real, like any real feedback. And I was like, wow, I do that. So I think the answer to that is to be honest and ask for it. But oftentimes, if you can come with a goal that you have, it can make it easier for the manager to give you that feedback, almost kind of indirectly, right? So if you're number 2 on the team, you're trying to get to number 1, and you ask, what's the number 1 rep doing that I'm not? You may find that some feedback comes out there. So if you have to do it a little bit indirectly, you can. But those 360 reviews and those upward feedback surveys that a lot of organizations are putting into place are also a very effective way for newer managers to learn that that is a core part of their job. So be honest and be direct in what you're asking for.
Totally. I love that. I think sometimes people forget that top performers can get better. Like someone mentioned at the beginning, I think it was Tiki. So that's a really good call out. There's a couple questions we didn't get to, but I'll make sure the Valor team gets to them post-event. And then we'll be moving into panelist takeaways now. So as a reminder, we're just going to spin through your tweet length takeaway. What do you want attendees to take away from this event? Pratik, Tiki, kick us off.
Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet. Losing is okay as long as you learn from it, right? Like that's my big takeaway. If you know, someone had asked the question about how do you bounce back, if you can lose a deal and get one actionable takeaway from it, right? You know, example, I lost the deal because I didn't multi-thread multiple contacts and I was siloed with one contact. You're never going to do that again on the next deal. That's a win, and you're going to end up winning 10x more deals than the one that you lost. So pick up a lesson from every loss, and you'll constantly improve.
Awesome. Pete, what's your takeaway?
I think my takeaway is the importance of preparation and then post-performance reflection in facilitating a performance mindset. Preparation being getting yourself teed up, visualizing what you're going to do, setting your intention for the outcomes, and then working backwards from there. And then the thing Inga added, which was after you performed, making sure to take that opportunity to like stamp into your memory the things that like how like what went well, what didn't go well, and then visualize how you would have preferred for that to go. So that gets persisted off, and then it gets picked up in preparation for the next time. I think that's awesome.
Completely. Inga, what's your takeaway?
I always like thinking through the question, what do you need exactly to set yourself up for success? And then we can check into with ourselves, is it physically, emotionally, mentally, or tactically or strategically, like where I feel I'm still missing something, and then going through this checklist and keep ensuring what we take care of ourselves for the success what we want to achieve.
Completely. And then last but certainly not least, Tim.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway for me, and hopefully it came through for others, you know, Tiki was talking about giving feedback, talking about receiving feedback. Pete's talking about, you know, preparation and recovery. And all of these things come down to the mindset, right? You have to have the mindset to be able to give feedback. You have to have the mindset to receive feedback, right? It's not always easy to receive feedback depending on how it's given. You need the mindset to put in the proper preparation so that you are prepared for when you do show up to do the work. And you have to be in the right mindset to be able to take a step back, like Inga was just talking about, and recovering and assessing the situation, whether that's taking 2 breaths after a call and talking through what went well and what didn't go well, right? And most of all, finding what works for you, because there isn't a one-size-all approach for everybody. What works for Tiki may not work for me, may not work for Inga. So finding, you know, what is best for you and what's going to help you perform.
Completely. Thanks, Tim. Well, with that, we are already at time. I don't know about you guys, but I think this is one of the most valuable events we've hosted in a while. There are a lot of great first principles that completely transcend sales. So thank you, Inga, Tim, and Tiki for speaking. And another huge thank you to Valor for sponsoring and Pete for co-moderating. We have a lot of events coming up, so check those out and can't wait to see you all next time. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks, everyone.